Welcome to Women Entrepreneurs Radio with your host, Deborah Bailey. When I started this podcast in 2008, I was on a mission to promote women business owners, creatives, and entrepreneurs. In each episode, my guests provide resources, valuable tips, and inspiration. Women Entrepreneurs Radio is about showing women how to harness their natural strength to achieve success on their own terms. Welcome to Women Entrepreneurs Radio with your host, Deborah Bailey. So glad you could join us today. And now I'm going to introduce my guest. Dr. Tomi White Bryan has long been fascinated with creating maps and tools that simplify the complexities of life. She's used these tools to become a lawyer, university professor, compliance and leadership consultant, executive coach, and senior leader in 2 global organizations. She's written 4 other self-help books, 3 of them under the pen name Tommy Llama. An avid learner, she believes life is a grand adventure. When she isn't sitting on the back porch of her North Carolina home with her tennis-loving husband and tennis ball-fetching black lab, she enjoys her latest career as a coach, keynote speaker, and facilitator.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. I've enjoyed the giggles that we've been having already.
Well, for some reason, I just keep wanting to say Tony and not Tommy, so I just have to.
Well, I tell people if that's the worst thing I get called today, I'm doing really, really good.
Exactly. So it's like, okay, that's okay. I don't know. It's like this is probably fitting into this conversation that we're going to be having, because my brain certainly decided it's got other plans when it comes to your name for some reason. So it's been very interesting. Listeners, you missed out on the fun that we had beforehand, but don't worry, I probably will do it again. So
we'll get to laugh some more.
Not a problem. You won't miss too much. So please tell us how you got started in the work that you do.
So it's a long, sordid journey. Do we have beer and peanuts? or
if only.
Or wine and cheese, maybe?
Great.
I started out, so I come from a long line of helpers, right? My family's tradition is to help others. And I went to law school and became a lawyer so I could help others. And it became very clear to me quickly that wasn't the way I wanted to help people. And so I went in search of what else was available to me through my own uniqueness in being of service to the world. And that took me on a crazy journey of going back to school and getting a PhD in leadership. And ultimately, I found coaching and facilitation as the path to really being of service, because I create these maps and tools that help people cut through the complexity of human endeavors. And so, yeah, I love doing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said before, that would certainly help with, people's brains that have their own ideas. So
yes,
that needs to be looked into. So you've written a book called Emotional Intelligence 3.0. Why did you feel that this was really an important topic to cover right now?
There's a lot of things that converged for me in the last couple of years. I've been on a long, painful, slow 20-year self-help journey to find the best within. I call it my 20 years in the desert. And each one of the books I wrote was a map to the point of where I was. And I was sitting in I have this magical chair in my house. I call it my magical chair. When I sit there, magical things happen, right? And I'll stop myself and I'll say, just sit here and allow. And I was sitting there one day wondering what this whole 20-year journey had been about. What was the point? What's the purpose? What am I really doing here? And this little voice said, emotional intelligence. And I thought, oh, I'd been pursuing leadership and leadership coaching and executive coaching. And I realized that what was underneath those items is really our emotional well-being and our emotional intelligence. And that's when I thought, okay, let me do a deep dive. And my husband jokes, he goes, some days all I can see is you bent over and dirt flying as you're digging deeper and deeper into the whatever you're looking in, right? And that's what I did with emotional intelligence. I just did this really deep dive. And part of the reason why it feels so imperative to me for us to raise our emotional intelligence is I don't believe the world's going in a positive direction overall. That doesn't mean there aren't people doing good things. I mean, look at Deb, what you're doing in the world is beautiful. I love you leaning into your unique aliveness and helping women. But not everybody's doing that, and not everybody knows how to do that. So what can we do? What can I do, the individual, Tomi Bryan, to help people turn themselves in a direction that's meaningful and powerful for them?
The audience for this particular book is leadership coaches.
Yes, but everybody can benefit from it. It's actually the roadmap to emotional well-being. Deb, you've written books. They make you pick a target audience because you can't say it's for everybody, right? And I do believe coaches like you and others and me, we're doing important work in the world by helping people find the next place of emotional well-being for them. So it felt like a great starting point for the model.
So what does it look like for someone to find balance? Because I'm guessing that for emotional intelligence, that's also going to help someone to find balance in their life and, in their community and their family.
Yes.
What does that look like?
Yeah, I'm pausing because there's all these little places I could start. So let me pick one that's meaningful. So the thing about emotional intelligence 3.0 and why it's distinguished from emotional intelligence 2.0 is it's the next version of it, right? Emotional intelligence 2.0 is about managing, the word managing, right? Your emotions and the emotions of others to try to create an exchange where no one's marginalized. And emotional balance says, listen, it's not about managing those emotions. It's about digging underneath to find the root cause of the feelings that get triggered. And if we can unravel those feelings and get to the root of those, we will walk around in a state of peaceful being and not spew our hatred or dislike or whatever it is we're spewing in that moment at others. A great starting point for that, and this is usually the place I start with my clients, is I invite them to find their top 5 values. Most of us don't realize that our top 5 values are, it's the things that we deeply care about and what we should be making choices around. It's what we should be building our life around. But most of us don't know that. Most of us, in fact, I've probably worked with 10,000 people around the globe with their values. And in my work, whether it was a setting of 200 people or a setting of 10 people, only about 3 of those 10,000 people could cite all 5 of their values. Now, somebody might be able to tell me 1 or 2, but they couldn't cite all 5. And especially for your audience of women entrepreneurs, you want your business to be a reflection of who you are and what you deeply care about. And I've had people say to me, values are aspirational. No, you should be living into those in each and every moment.
I wonder how often that really happens in terms of business. And I'm sure you're working with people all these different levels, but a lot of times the business world says it has certain values, like a company may say they have certain values, but they may not exactly have that value or encourage their employees to have that value, may not treat their employees with those values. Doesn't that create a real disconnect?
So Deb, that's a beautiful recognition on your part of the incongruence in organizations. The challenge, though, and this is, I actually have a workshop for organizations where you teach people how to discern their top 5 values and how to live from that. Because as the CEO of an organization, I can say, these are our values, but if I don't know how to live from mine, how am I going to teach the organization to live from theirs? I can't. And so part of the workshop is teaching people how to live from their values. There's even because I love worksheets and tools, I have a tool where you take your 5 values and the organization's 5 values, and you see how the behaviors, right? Because a value is a word. What really matters is the behavior that it creates in you or the organization. So it doesn't matter if I have different values from the organization if they show up the same. And I'll give you an example. My number 1 value is family, right? You want to see me become a mama bear in less than 2 seconds to mess with my children, right? And my husband values loyalty. But because his number 1 value is loyalty, he's going to be loyal to the family. And because I value family, I'm going to be loyal to the family. So even though we have different values, as those behaviors show up, we stand in the same place regarding how we're going to love, honor, and respect our own family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so organizations need to be able to connect individual values to organizational values. Organizations are not, I don't want to make a blanket statement, but most of the organizations I've worked with and run into or engaged with really don't understand how to live from their values.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a lot of the problem that they may have trying to understand their employees, or why, we're going through changes now where, people didn't want to go back to the office, and then they were leaving, and then there was all these articles trying to dissect, well, why is this happening? But I think sometimes it's because of what you're talking about. The company is saying one thing, but they're doing something else.
Yeah. Yes. And because I don't know how to do it for myself, I can't give you something I don't have. Mm-hmm. If I don't know how to do it for myself, I can't do it for you. So if the leadership of the organization doesn't know how to do it, they can't teach the organization how to do it. And so, Deb, there's this metric I created called the zone of tolerance and the zone of intolerance. Mm-hmm. And I can go to work every day for an organization as long as the zone of intolerance, and that's the zone where you continually walk all over my values, right? I can live with that about 30% of the time, right? Because the world is not perfect and we have to engage in compromise. Mm-hmm. So as long as the organization honors my values about 70% of the time, I can manage it. But when that zone of intolerance starts to creep up over 30%, you'll see people starting to get the physical manifestation of the tension. They'll get stomach aches, they'll get headaches, they'll get digestive issues, and they don't want to go to work on Monday. And that's because they're in the zone of intolerance. And the organization is now basically, every day you go to work and you can't be who you are. And one of the biggest examples of that is an organization that says it values integrity and then just stomps all over that all day long. Mm-hmm. That's really going to upset. And that's a lot of reason, Deb, why people are leaving. Mm-hmm. I can't trust my organization anymore. You're not going to do right by me. It's a very difficult time in the world for employees.
That's a great point and a great example as well. When people feel that disconnect between the two, and then when it plays out in all kinds of issues for people, and then all the frustration, everything builds, and then that leads to health problems. And there's a lot going on here than people may realize.
Yeah, and for me, I had the benefit of reading this article, and I can't remember who wrote it, at the very beginning of the pandemic, where the author of the article said, we need to do 3 things. First, we need to figure out how to survive. Then we need to figure out how to thrive. And then we need to figure out how to come out of the turn. Mm. What's happened is most of us are stuck in survival. We haven't figured out how to survive in this new normal.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can't even get people to think about thriving, right? Maybe 25% of the population is thriving. And for me, it feels like we need to give people tools that will help them figure out how to move from surviving to thriving so that we can understand ourselves in light of this new normal. Because it's not going away. It's here to stay. We got to figure out how to manage to it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's really, really great, a great idea for people just to kind of see that and realize, we have to confront this and really, look for that new normal as opposed to trying to pretend that, well, that didn't happen, which unfortunately, I think,
right.
Yeah, happens too often, but, that happens for a lot of different things as well.
Yes.
What do you find works and doesn't work within the self-development world?
I think one of the biggest challenges about the self-development world, also along with the leadership world, is that we have people who pick out little snippets and we go read a book and it's a snippet. It's not the whole cycle. And that's one reason why I wrote Emotional Intelligence 3.0. It is the life cycle of development, whether you're a leader or, a regular Joe who just wants to find the best within, or regular Susie, or whoever wants to find the best within. I used to get so irritated when I couldn't find a worksheet or a tool or a map that says, Tommy, you're right here at point A, and you need to go to D to be the best leader you can be. So what Emotional Intelligence 3.0 does is there's also an assessment that goes with the book. You can take the assessment and it will locate you. It will tell you exactly where you are in what I call the development spiral of emotional balance. So you can see where you are. We also, in the book, lay out each behavior that's happening at that spot, and then talk about the emotional opening and the tools that you can use to move to the next spot. So it's this holistic system of, if you want to have high emotional intelligence, it will tell you where you are, where you want to go, and how to get there.
So how has elevating emotional intelligence helped you in your life?
There are so many beautiful side effects to emotional intelligence. And I think, Deb, for women entrepreneurs, we like to help others. And we do that sometimes to the detriment of our own well-being. We will give and give and give, and then one day we wake up mad as a hornet, and we're not really sure why, but it's because we've given and given and no one's given back. And part of this for me has been the natural deepening into the understanding that there are some things for me to do and there are some things that aren't mine to do. And those things that aren't mine to do shouldn't be done by me. That freed up so much energy to allow me to be other things.
Now that sounds like that'd be really challenging, because a lot of times I think, particularly women who may feel that they've got to do everything. And if they're running a business and then they've got other things that they have to take care of, it may be really hard for them to say, well, this is what I need to focus on, and maybe just not trying to do it all and be it all and running themselves.
So Deb, that's a beautiful point. And I call that the book of life, right? I love it when my clients will come and say that when I'm coaching someone and they'll say, well, I have to do X, Y, and Z for the family at 4:00 on Saturday because I'm a good daughter. And I'll say, can you tell me the page number and paragraph number in the book of life where it says you have to do that? And I'll go, listen, there is no book of life. It's your life. It's your rules. But we've been taught things that we do unconsciously or subconsciously, or because we think we have to keep peace in the family. And a large part of what I love, Deb, that you're doing in the world, and I'm so grateful you've shined your brilliance my way to let me be here with you, is you're giving women the platform to say, I want to rewrite what's in my book of life so it serves me and the greater good, not just everybody else and not me.
Well, thank you. And I think that's an interesting thing, because when I started doing this, I just want to meet other people who are doing their thing, because a lot of times you don't hear about that. And I think sometimes you still really don't in the media overall. You're not hearing about the average person who's out there, whether they have a huge, gigantic business or whether they're, just starting out. You don't hear about them and their challenges and successes and all that good stuff. You kind of hear about the media personality who, has the name, but you don't hear about everyone else. And I think sometimes, I thought at that time it would be a little discouraging to me. I could say average quote unquote person out here who's just trying to follow your dream or your passion or your business, whatever, but never seeing anybody talk about that, unless you're the big name person or the influencer or someone like that. You just aren't seeing that out there.
That's such an astute point. And one of my challenges with society the way it is today is I don't think we should live our lives by what influencers tell us to do. Right. And I love that you're out here trying to spotlight the person who's standing in their own unique aliveness and doing what they, this beautiful thing they came here to do. Because I believe there's a place in the world that only you can fill, and there's something in the world that only you can do. And when that happens, the magic is unbelievable. And that magic may not necessarily be money, right? It may be the thousands of lives that you change through the work that you're doing. Or maybe you create a new product that changes something, right? Reshapes the way we see the world. Or maybe you're the dishwasher at a local restaurant who's making sure that everybody who comes in there eats off of a clean plate. And isn't that a beautiful thing? The problem is we don't celebrate the person. We think of a dishwasher. We don't think of that beautiful woman making sure every plate that comes out of her kitchen is nice and clean. And isn't that beautiful for the rest of us who go there and eat?
That's a great point. And I think when people think that way and they realize that they also have a contribution to make, and they're not going to dismiss it because they think it's too small or they don't have cameras following them or something like that.
The world does not go around because someone has 5 million followers on Instagram or Twitter. The world goes around because somebody shows up today and sweeps the halls at the local school. Or the world goes around because somebody shows up to be behind the camera or pull all the cords, and wrap them up so nobody trips on them, right? It takes all of us doing all of these things to make the world go round.
That's true. That's a great point. So what does an emotional intelligence breakthrough look like?
So I call these there are opportunities every day for us to shift the way we see the world. And I call these emotional openings. And I tell people that the universe or God, or the deity of your religion is always talking to you. And it's whether or not and first they'll whisper in your ear, right? Hey, Deb, you probably should be going in a different direction. But because of all the noise in the world, we don't hear that. So then something comes along and the universe will tap you really hard on the shoulder, tap, tap, tap. Hey, Deb, you didn't hear us the first time, so we're going to give you a little bit bigger opportunity. Maybe you'll see this one. And we miss that. And then the universe has to whack us on the back of the head with a 2x4. Now, I'm a 2x4 girl, Deb, right? That's the way it had to be for me for many years because I thought I knew more than the universe, and I don't. And then when that 2x4 hits us, our whole world can come to a standstill, right? So for me, what I want folks to know, and this is built into the model, every emotional state identified in Emotional Intelligence 3.0 has dynamics taking place in that. If you can take advantage of those dynamics, it's easier to transform than if you wait for the universe to hit you with the 2x4 or tap you on the shoulder. And the thing that's difficult is in the first state of emotional intelligence 3.0, protection. We're so protected because the world has been ugly to us that it's really hard to get people to notice their behaviors and the need to change. The reason why it's called protection is because I'm kind of locked down, protecting myself, because to survive, I have to do it this way. If I do it any other way, I might not survive. And so it's very hard in the very first emotional state to get attention of people to try to change.
That's an interesting point. So how about your own journey through these emotional states? How's that been?
Oh, Deb, you mean all the 2x4s to the back of the head, my friend?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so there are these hallmarks of knowing when it's the right time to change. For me, the biggest moment came shortly after my father's death in 1998. There was this question just calling from somewhere deep within. I'm supposed to be doing something. What is it? I'm supposed to be doing something. What is it? And I've heard other people say that same thing in different ways. And shortly after my father died, I was having dinner with my mother, and this calling had become so big I could not contain it inside myself anymore. And so I finally said to my mother, I can't, I'm supposed to be doing something. I don't know what it is. And it's so profound, I have to tell somebody. And she said, well, that's interesting. Your dad used to say the same thing. Really, Mom? When? And she goes, yeah, right up until he died. So my father died, a young man by some standards at 65, not knowing that his work as a psychologist that changed so many lives was the work he was supposed to be doing. And I had this just sort of crack down the middle of, I am not dying, not having lived my purpose, and neither will my two boys. So that set me off, right, stalking this. And that question is really when you're at the end of the initial emotional state of protection. You realize that something bigger is out there for you, and how do I find it? And then, and Deb, I have to share with you that it was only after all of these things had finished that I was able to look back and say, oh, this is what happened to me. This is what that was. And, so that deep calling from within was the thing that moved me to the emotional state of expression. Now, here's what happens. I believe there's an unwritten rule that we live by that says it's not safe to be who you are, so you must be something else, and the unwritten rule will tell you what to be. Right? From even before we're born, Deb, it's going to be a girl. She can be a debutante like her mother, or it's a boy. He can do this, or what, he can take over so long before you're even here. We don't even know your personality yet. We're making plans. And so it is. And so when we arrive, these sort of archetypes and anchors about who we're going to be already exist. And so to stay safe and belong in our family unit or tribe, we will give up who we came here to be what the system tells us we have to be. And I call that an adapted identity. And it's a beautiful thing. It's the identity we made up to stay safe and belong to our tribe, because we're little and we don't know how to do anything else. So we're busy giving up parts. So what happens in expression, the second emotional state, is we realize, oh, okay, I don't have to be that, but what am I going to be? And most of us don't have a graceful way for disentangling from the life we were told we could have. So we blow it all up trying to find the next version of who we are. So expression is about rebuilding the identity in the way that fits who you are. So across expression, I help my clients find their values, their strengths, their social currency, and their purpose, because what happens is I fall in love with my clients as they fall in love with themselves, maybe for the first time, as they realize, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to be what the family told me I have to be, or what society, I can be whatever I want to. So it's this beautiful reclaiming of who we are across expression.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that certainly is a journey. Once people realize that they can take that journey and have it be something even better for them as they experience that.
Yes. Yes. And it's lovely to watch people claim their power in that way. So we don't understand power. We one of the things I talk about in the book is we mistake the imbalanced social engagement dynamic of control for power. Power is actually the only power that exists is your right to choose. You get to choose who you become, who you are, what you do in every moment. And no one can take that away from you, although we think they can through control. And we will surrender unknowingly our right to choose to people who have more power than us or seem to have more control.
That's very interesting. I think a lot of people, if not most people, don't realize that.
And that's what happens with that unwritten rule, right? The unwritten rule takes away our right to choose because we're already told who we're going to be. So we don't think we get the right to choose. And we'll see a lot of people in their 40s, 50s, and sometimes, in their 60s blow up their lives because what I say is they finally have enough life history to know what they're doing's not working, and they don't know what to do about it. So they have the ugly divorce, or they, move across country and leave all their friends behind, or stop talking to family members. And that's because we don't have tools that help us disengage from the life we built by the unwritten rule instead of the one we want to build.
So that sounds like what we usually call it, like a midlife crisis.
So I've actually stopped calling them that, but you're exactly right. What happens is because we haven't had a language for that, we watch somebody blow their life up and we think, how dumb are you, or how stupid? No, that person has finally realized they're leading a life someone else told them they had to lead. And they finally feel strong enough. I'm going to build the life I want, but I don't have the tools for disentangling. So yes, it looks like a midlife crisis.
Right. That's really interesting because, people don't really have the tools or the language, or we're not used to looking at it that way. So, it's called that crisis. And then, of course, it becomes like a cliche. People will suddenly be this other thing. But, you're saying that maybe that was really who they were or wanted to be or who were called to be, but it just looks so different.
Yes.
People judge it that way.
Yes. Well, we're very good at judging. Right? I was at a workshop last week where one of my colleagues said, I'm working on replacing judgment with curiosity. And if we got curious as we watch someone blow up it's happened Deb, it's just happened too many times for us to think that it's not common. Right. People blow their lives up because we don't have any other way to extract ourselves. We need to create tools to allow us to extract ourselves from something that doesn't suit us anymore.
Exactly. And then, we start to look at that a lot differently. Maybe we can start to call it different things than we've been calling it. Maybe have more respect for it and for people who do it instead of just kind of really ridiculing them.
Right.
Making fun of them, or however that comes across. A lot of times it's not looked at very well by the people around them at all.
Well, and that's because we don't have I can't say to you, listen, I love you, but this is no longer working for me. And I'm wondering if we can just conduct an experiment for 6 months, because this isn't working for me, and I don't want to hurt you, but I also need to be who I came here to be. But we don't know how to have those conversations, right? That's a large part of it.
That's true. That's very true. And I could see how changing that would change a lot of people's lives.
So I've told my husband, I said, listen, I love you dearly, and there may become a moment where this marriage no longer works for you. And if that happens, tell me. I love you enough to let you go be who you need to be.
Wow, that's very brave.
Well, but if he's not happy with me anymore, why would I want to keep him as a caged bird? That wouldn't work for either of us.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing also, that we become so afraid to speak those truths because we're not sure what that's going to mean.
Well, right. We're afraid for ourselves.
Right.
Right. I've been married to Jim for 33. I hope I get it right. 33 years. I hope I get that right. For 33 years. Who am I without him? Right. Oh, you know what? I'm a pretty amazing human being. Right. And I don't need Jim. I love having a grand adventure with Jim. And that's a different stance.
Yes, that's true. That's a great way to look at it, because a lot of times that's not how it's looked at generally in our culture. So that's a totally different way of looking at it. Sounds like a healthier way to look at it as well. So Tommy, could you please take a moment and share where listeners can find out more about you and where they can find you online?
Sure. RaiseYourEI.com. Is the sort of emotional intelligence head of the river. You can find tools for individuals, tools for organizations, tools for coaches. So RaiseYourEI.com or TommyBryan.com. Either one works.
Wonderful. Oh, that's great. Yeah, because there's a lot of good stuff here. So I'm sure that listeners are going to want to find out more. Definitely, so they can really learn some more of the things that you're sharing here. So what does it look like being intentional in your life?
Intentionality for me is about the pause, right? Before I say yes or no to something, is this take me in the direction of who I want to be tomorrow? Or does it have the opportunity or the likelihood it will do that? And if it doesn't, then I'm not gonna go in that path. And so I actually, again, Deb, back to my worksheets. I have some worksheets about the balanced action. What is the emotionally balanced action? And that's me looking at what I'm being asked to do or invited to do. Does it align with my values, my purpose? Who I want to be tomorrow. And if not, then I'm going to say, have a great time, but that doesn't feel like it's for me. And so it's really, if you don't know who you are at the core, it's really hard to be intentional. You will, it's easy to be swayed because you really don't know what you stand for.
And so it sounds like when people work with you or they're defining their values and things like that, this really is going to help them along this path.
Yes. So there's a whole slew of worksheets. I'm the worksheet queen, right? Where you take your values and you turn them into boundaries. So you know how to build sacred space for yourself. And then you use those values to make important decisions. There's a decision-making process. So that essentially every choice we make will take us deeper into that which we already are.
Wow, that sounds great.
Now it's time for us to have some wine and cheese with that, right?
Exactly. Oh my goodness. Yeah, especially if you're talking about the being intentional and also the boundaries, which is another thing that I think that people often struggle with.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
that can come up in the personal and the professional, that every part of your life is that thing where a lot of times people are feeling like they're struggling between how much are they tolerating, which is
Yes.
what you mentioned before, and how they can say, well, no, this is not right for me. And yeah, I think those are real challenges
Yes.
that we have definitely in our culture. And I think, again, women in business in general are going to have those kinds of challenges, because a lot of times women, get the message they're not supposed to do that.
The system is set up to marginalize, and I don't know that I like the word marginalize, but I'm not sure I have another word in my vocabulary yet. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not balanced. Right. The way that organizational life is, the way that systems are, they were not designed for balance. They were designed mm-hmm. for control. And that's what we're mm-hmm. watching. And if we are not secure and safe in who we are and how we want to show up, we can be easily controlled.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And there's no judgment in that. That's just an observation of the system that we live in. And, I have controlled others and been controlled by others, right? So mm-hmm. it's not something that I haven't experienced, because I have, mm-hmm. but I've tried to move toward balance so I don't do those things anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that would be the ideal state. And, when you're, as you're saying, when you're intentional and aware and all those things, that you can understand who you are and what you want, and then how you're going to take those steps to move forward.
Yes.
Through that. Yeah. All of that, I think, is really positive and also very healthy for people to connect with. So this has been, of course, a wonderful conversation. Do you have any final thoughts to share?
Thank you for that opportunity. I want to remind women that you are an amazing, magnificent miracle. And if you're a miracle, every day you should show up and act like that. Don't let anybody tone down your volume. Don't let anybody tell you you can't do something, because it's always your choice.
That is very well said.
Oh, thank you. You're bringing it out in me, Deb. You're bringing out the goodness in me.
Very well said. And that's something that we can certainly all learn from. So I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast, Tommy. This has just been a terrific, I don't know, I don't even want to just call it just terrific show, but just education and learning and all of that stuff. It's a lot of good stuff there for us to really take in and see how we can apply this to our lives. So I think, I really learned a lot, and I just appreciate you being here and sharing that with us.
Thank you for allowing me to be here. It's a gift for me to be with you. I know folks can't see your beautiful smile because it's a podcast, but I can. And let me tell you, people, she lights up the room. It's beautiful to be in her presence.
Well, thank you so much. Well, I feel like I have a fan club here.
You do.
This is definitely what we need, particularly after the end of the day. We need to, be lifted up and lift ourselves up and really feel good about who we are and what we're doing. So wonderful. So everyone, I know that you enjoyed the show. Please check out Tommy's book and her site and see if you may possibly have a chance to work with her and connect with her, and also with her book and things we've been talking about here during the podcast. So once again, for Women Entrepreneurs Radio with your host, Deborah Bailey, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.